Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's DAF. Bava Metzia and Tess. We are on the bottom of Chesam and Beis. Omar Rabba Bar Bachana Omar B'Yechna Noyach Leil Adam. It should be easier for a person Sheyavayal Safek Ish to be maritally involved with a woman whose marital status is uncertain. Right? Perhaps she's a married woman, perhaps not. So getting involved with her is called a Safek Isser Ishes Ish. So that involvement is preferred to embarrassing somebody in public. You should not bring about the paling of his friend's face in public. You should not embarrass his friend in public, and that's worse. How do we know this? Minola. This is learned from David HaMelech. Mididarash Rava, based on Rava's Rosh. The Darash Rav. Ma'idechsev. What is the pasuk? In Tehillim Lamed Hey mean what it says? Ubitzali. Rashi says Tzali is lashon of Tzela, my side, my bone, which is a reference to his wife. David HaMelech's wife was Bathsheba. Initially, his involvement with her was, was problematic because the Gemara considers her a Safek. She had a status of somewhat of a Safek Eshes Ish. Rashi explains why was she a Safek Eshes Ish? Because all those who joined David HaMelech's Milchamais used to issue a divorce document to their wives on account of their future death, in order to avoid any issues of having to do yibum in case he died without kids. So it was like sort of a conditional divorce. And all throughout that time, from when the get was issued until, when the person actually died, such as in the case of Bathsheba's wife, Uriah Hachiti, she was considered Safek Mgureshes. Her status was sort of in limbo. Because if, in fact, her husband dies, then she's divorced retroactively. Otherwise not. So, David HaMelech's involvement with Bathsheba, the Gemara calls it a Safek Eshes Ish. Ubitz Ali Samchavene Safu Korev Leidamu. What is this pasuk referring to? David HaMelech is telling Hashem, Amar David Fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This all relates to the fact that there were many around David HaMelech's time who would chastise David, would make fun of him, would accuse him of being involved with an Eshes Ish. They would embarrass him in public. Ubitz Ali, on account of his wife. Omar David of Nagadish Baruch Ribboni Shalom Hashem, Master of the world. Golo Yivudol Fanecha. You know full and well that I'm always constantly being embarrassed in public. I'm being shamed. Shemayu Mekarim Besari. Even if they would remove my flesh, there would be no blood left there. I'm bloodless because of my shame and embarrassment. My blood would not trickle down to the floor. Basically, that's called halbanas panam, as we learned yesterday, because the blood sort of disappears. So this is referring to the fact that he was shamed and embarrassed. Not only that, look to what extent. Not only when they're sitting, idle, do they turn and embarrass me. Even when they're involved in heavy learning, halachos of negoim, halachos of tumah, v'halos, they make time to turn to me and they say, David, I have a question for you, David. Habal Eshes Ish, if one gets involved with an Eshes Ish, married woman, misasi v'ma, what are the consequences? What death penalty does Bezdin apply to this person? Basically, they were alluding to himself, to David HaMelech himself. And I would respond to them, well, misasi b'chenek. So Bezdin puts him to death by choking, but it's only a temporary dip. Ultimately, he has a portion to the world in the world to come. But you should all know, be careful. A person who embarrasses his friend in public, he's worse off than that. He loses his portion. So bottom line, we see that Safek Eshes Ish is of a lesser concern than Malbin Pnei Chavei Barab. V'amar Mar Zutra bar Tuvi Amar Rav. V'amar lo some say Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna Rav Shim Chasid. V'amar lo some say Amar Rabbi Yechanan Mishum Rav Shim bar Yochai. Noich leilo Adam. What else is more severe than halbanas panim? Noich leilo Adam sheyapil atzm. What is more? What is halbanas panim more severe to? What else? Noich leilo Adam sheyapil atzm lekivshana ish. A person should be willing to toss himself into a fiery furnace rather that than embarrassing somebody in public. How do we know this? Minolan mitamar. Right? That Yehuda was involved with her, and she didn't, when the time came, she did not identify him by name. Right? She just sent, right? She's being taken out to being killed. She sent a message to her father-in-law, to Yehuda here. These items here, if you can please, identify who they belong to, and he's the perpetrator. So she refused to name him by name and not to embarrass him, and she was willing to kill herself to allow herself to be tossed into that fiery, furnace. Amar Rav China Breda Rav Idi Ma'idich Siv V'lo Yisoinu Ishas Amitay. What does the pasuk mean when it says don't be insensitive to Amitay? What does Amitay mean? Im she'itcha b'Torah b'mitzvah is al toineu. A person who is with you, or am she'itcha, your nation, your community, somebody who conducts his life like one of yours. But Torah mitzvah, the person who's part of the Yiddish community in terms of keeping Torah mitzvah is al toineu. You're not allowed to hurt his feelings. You have to be sensitive in the way you interact with him. Amarav. This idea extends. This applies to an ordinary person, and certainly to one's spouse. Amarav la'olam yehi adam zahir. A person should take extra care ba'oinas ishtay to avoid hurting his wife's feelings. Rashi learns, since her tears are easy in coming, she gets very hurt very easily, right? And it brings to her crying, her tears. The punishment that Hashem will mete out on account of this on account of these hurt feelings, are quick are quick in coming. Once saw another pshat, beautiful pshat. I believe it was from Chaim Friedlander. He was a mashkiach in Panavision in Eretz Yisrael. He has a small pamphlet called Yodata Ki Shalom Ahalech. Beautiful content, all about Shalom Bayis. So he brings a pshat there. He says, tears. Why is a person crying? Is an expression of a person losing his own, hold of himself, loses his confidence, loses his feeling of self-worth, right? So a wife is so dependent upon her husband, right? For her self-worth, she seeks his approval, right? His vote of confidence. And when he puts her down, it's not just, this or that. It touches her core. She loses her whole feeling of self-worth. And the fact that the fact that she comes to tears easily, indicates that her feeling of self-worth isn't as strong. It's very delicate and sensitive, and therefore a husband must be extra careful not to shake that up. So because she has that dim'asa matsuya aspect, where her confidence isn't as secure as a man's, and she's dependent upon her man for that feeling of self-worth, so she's more susceptible, she's more sensitive to oino, to feeling put down and hurt, right? Unlike just a man-to-man where things could be exchanged and thrown about, people don't get so easily hurt and broken. But a wife is different because of her absolute dependence upon her husband for feeling of self-worth, etc. Unbelievable. Pshat Gemara. Omar Belazar miyom shenechar Beis Hamikdash. Starting from the time of the Beis Hamikdash destruction, nin alu sharei tefillah. the gates of heaven, which allow our tefillos to go through, got closed up, and it's very difficult to daven and to be successful in tefillah. Shnemar, gam ki ezak vashavea sosam tefillos, Hashem blocked away the tefillah. But v'afal b'sheshar tefillah and alu, although that happened to with respect to regular tefillahs, but shari demois leinin alu, a person employs tears and really opens his heart to Hashem with demois, that opens up all the gates and allows our tefillahs to go through successfully. Shnemar, Shima tefillasi Hashem v'shavasi azina el dimasi al techrash. Rashi learns, it's a statement. Al techrash, Hashem does not remain silent in the face of tears. V'amarav. So when it comes to regular tefillas, we have to daven, Hashem, please listen to our tefillas, right? Shima tefillasi. But if it's accompanied by tears, that total, bittul to Hashem, that total connection just rams through everything. A person who regularly follows his wife's counsel, he can end up in Gehenna. She can lead him astray. The pasuk says Achav strayed due to his wife Izebel's counsel. Really? People say, it's a common phrase, that you meant to listen to your wife's advice. If you have a short wife, bend down, whisper to her your question and basically seek her advice. Like Kasha, the answer is like this. Depends for what? Habimili de alma. When it involves worldly matters, then make your own decision. Don't ask her. Vabimili de besa. But when it comes to domestic issues, household issues, that's her domain, and there, better ask her opinion. She's entitled to her input. And you meant to seek her advice. There's another way to answer this kasha. When it involves, worldly stuff, then you go to your wife for advice. But when it comes to mila d'shmaya, spiritual things, that's the husband's domain, and he should be making his own, forging his own path. There's a beautiful story involving Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal. So somebody overheard this conversation. This was at a wedding, and they were meant to, made up to meet at the mechitza at a certain point in time to figure out when they were going to leave the wedding. So Rabbi Yaakov meets his Rebbitzin at the mechitza, and he says to her, what are you holding? You ready to go? So she says to him, what does the Rav say? She's to call him the Rav. What does the Rav say? What does the Rav want? So he says to her, look, the Gemara says, Mili de Shemaya, that's my business, but this is Mila de Alma, I'm coming to ask you. So she says to him, in my world, in my life, the Rav's Mili di Alma, the Rav's mundane matters are for me, I regard them as Mili Dishmaya. For me, they're spiritual, they're holy. There's no such thing as your mundane matters. To me, all your mundane things are to me spiritual. So back to you. You make that decision. Okay, so a half hour? So, okay, we'll leave it a half hour. That's the way Rabbi Yaakov and his Rebbetzin adopted this Gemara. So again, all the sha'arim of tefillah were locked up except for shari eino. Rashi says hatzoyek al einos tvarim. If a person calls out to Hashem because people are teasing him and being not nice to him, ein hashar ninal b'fanav. The gates are open for those complaints, for those tefillahs. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, hine Hashem nitzav al chemas anach v'yadei anach. Hashem is standing there. Ubiyadei anach, in his hand, and in his hands he has, he's focusing on the anach, on the ainoah. He's always dealing with it and responding in kind. Amar Balaza, kol nifra b'dei shliach chutz me'ainoah. All other punishments are sent through a shliach from Hashem, except for punishments involving ainoah, in response to, verbal insensitivities. Shenamar v'yadei anach. Hashem personally kaviyachol deals with that. Amar Bavo. Gimel, there are three things that ein ha-pargud. Pargud is a partition between the Shechina of Hashem and the the spiritual legions of the Malachim. So basically, when that mechitza is taken away, so the Shechina and Kaviyachal Hashem, see right through it, and they're sort of everything is revealed and open to them. So typically there is some sort of blockage there, but when it comes to some sort of screen, but there are things which are visible and open all the time, and Hashem takes note of them all the time. What is this ainoah? When people are insensitive to each other. The gezel, robbery, v'avodah zarah. How do we know this? Right? Like we said before, Hashem is always, sort of paying attention to this directly. Gezel, regarding gezel violations, chamas, v'shoid, robbery, yishama ba, panei tamid, that's before me all the time, says Hashem. And his response to avodah zarah, type of things, so once again, when it comes to this thing, avodah zarah, it's always before him, and ever present. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, person should do all he could to ensure adequate supply of food in one's home. He should look after the family's parnasa. Unfortunately, typically meriva, discord and tension in one's home is always based on typically it's based on parnasa shortages. Shenamar hasam gvul echshalayim. How does Hashem bring the peace in one's home? Chaylev chiti me'aspiach. Hashem will satiate you with an abundance of of grain. So one should ensure that as much as he could to ensure an adequate supply of parnasa, so that financial matters should not chas v'shalom instigate machlekes in one's home. Amar Papa behind the inshi. This fits with the common phrase. When the barley is depleted from the container, things are in dire financial strait. Nakish v'asi tigra. So tigra is the machlekes, comes knocking the base in one's home. Once again, a person should do all he could to ensure an adequate flow of parnasa in one's home. Because the term dalim, poor, was applied to Klal Yisrael because of grain shortages. They lost their grain and they became poor. A person should take extra care to honor, to provide proper respect to one's wife. Bracha in one's home only comes on account of one's wife. She's the conduit for bracha. She deserves your respect. So Parah gave Avram all those gifts. Why? Bavura, on account of Sarah. She's the source of his parnasa, and therefore she deserves his respect. Rava lived in Mechayz, and he told the residents of the town, be careful. Make sure to give cover to your wives. If you're looking to get wealthy, that's the way to do it. Continues the Gemara Tanan Hassam. We have a Mishnah over there in Maseches Kelim. So we're speaking about an old-time, oven. So the old-style ovens were like this. Rashi says it was like a kedera gedola, like a big pot made of cheres, made of pottery, which was then reinforced and insulated and cemented into the ground. They would bake in this thing. Now this tanner, this oven discussed in the Mishnah, is very unique. Had a very unique style. Basically, they took a kli cheres, which is going to have susceptibility to tumah, and in order to immunize it, so to speak, from becoming tamei, this fellow sliced it into slices. Okay, so now instead of one big sort of pot, he has like rings. These rings. And he inserted some just loose sand between the rings. So it's sort of like separate pieces, not really one unit made of cheres. Rather, it's being held together by this sand, which is not really makabel tumah. So what is the status of this so-called oven? Is it a kli? Is it makabel tumah or not? We had a huge machlokes. Rabbi Lezer mitayr. He says, well, it's not subject to halachos of tumah. It's not a kli because it's not one singular unit. It's just pieces being held together by this improvised system. The chachamim say no. The fact is, the main walls are made from the main elements are cheres, and the chayil in between the rings do not nullify the cheres, and it still has a status of a klei cheres. It's makabel tuma. V'zehu tanur shel achnai, and this tanur was labeled tanur shel achnai. What does that mean? Achnai is a large snake, which puts its who's holding his tail in his mouth in like a ring, form. My achnai. So what's the connection to achnai? Omar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Sheikifu dvarim. They surrounded. They encircled this oven with dvarim, with arguments, and it was a very lively event. Ka'ach nazu, like this circular snake, v'tim'u, and ultimately they concluded that the tanur is subject to halachos of tumah. So Rashi says, what triggered the whole debate was a story, a masa, that they had this type of oven, and some tumah element fell into the oven, and then they used the tanur for tahir items. So basically, the tahir items came into contact with this questionable oven, and they presented it to the Beis Medrash. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Tar, this oven is not subject to halachas of tumah. It's not going to transfer tumah to the taharis." And Chachamim insisted that it's treated like a regular tanur. And Rashi adds, "Veivium v'sarfim lefanav," and they actually brought those items of tahara which were exposed to the tanur. They brought it to the Beis Medrash and they burnt it in front of him, in his presence, to sort of cement the halacha in place, to establish this as the going halacha l'maaseh. And Rabbi Lezer was adamant in maintaining his position. He did not give up, even though he was confronted. He was being opposed by the majority. He stuck to his guns and he insisted on maintaining his position. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, on that very day, Hishiv Rabbi Lezer called to Shuvah Sheba'olam. So this was a very lively day, and like we said, we came around with all kinds of arguments and discussions, like this round snake. Basically, this was like a very Lebedika type of interaction, and Rabbi Lezer responded with all his arguments. Called Shuvah Sheba'olam, any argument that he could come up with, he used it to further his opinion. And they didn't. The Chachamim did not accept it. Amar lahem. So to prove his point, he says like this: if I'm right in the halacha, he pointed to a certain tree, a carob tree. This tree should prove my case. And what happened? Suddenly the tree flies out of its spot, and it jumps 100 amas away. Some say 400 amas away. So it did pretty much in terms of showing Rabbi Lezer's power, and perceivably it actually supported his position, right, in the halacha, in the question. Amrullah, the Chachamim were not phased. They said, Ein mevin rayim nacharav. The charav's actions do not prove anything. We don't base our halachas on miracles. The fact is, to us it appears that the halacha is a certain way. The trees flying will not change it by an iota. So again he responded to them, if the halacha is like me, let this stream of water prove my point. And what happened? Suddenly the water started backing up. The current reversed itself, which was a very unusual, miraculous type of phenomena. Amrullah, once again, they responded, we're unfazed. We can't prove anything from a stream of water. He continued to tell them, look, the walls of this Beis Medrash will prove my point. And suddenly, the wall started collapsing, leaning down. So Rabbi Yeshua addressed the walls, and he started yelling at them. He says, just because us Talmid Chachamim are engaged in a halachic debate, why are you getting involved? What are you doing getting involved? So what happened? They didn't complete their fall. They didn't fully collapse. Why? In Rabbi Shua's honor, right? They didn't continue falling. Nor did they return to their original upright position to protect Rabbi Lezer's honor. So they're sort of in limbo. And at the time of the Gemara, they were still sort of hanging in limbo in between, not upright nor fully collapsed. They're sort of in between, in the middle, right there. Rabbi Lezer continued addressing the Chachamim. If Allah follows my opinion, I want that in heaven they should prove my point. Listen to this. A heavenly voice calls out and says, why are you opposing Rabbi Lezer? Whoever Rabbi Lezer has an opinion, that's the halacha. So this pretty much settled the case, right? No. So once again, Rabbi gets up and says, look, our Torah says that Torah is not a Shamayim. What does that mean? What does that mean? We're at the point in history where Torah had already been given to us at Har Sinai. And therefore, we don't pay attention to Baskel if it serves to contradict a seemingly Torah principle. What does that mean? What does it say in that Torah that we got at Har Sinai? We follow the majority. And the majority ruled differently than Rabbi Lezer. That's how we paskin. Notwithstanding the Baskel and all the other miracles that we've just experienced. Torah is down here on earth. At that juncture, Rabbi Nassan meets Eliyahu Hanavi. Tell me, what's Hashem doing at this moment? He says, he's smiling, he's laughing. And he's saying, Nitzchuni banai, my children down there have now prevailed. Because they sort of superseded and overran the Baskel by ruling against Rabbi Lezer. Amru. So what happened on that day? Amru, it was said like this. On that day, from Beish. They delivered all the items, all the taharis that had come into contact with this questionable oven, which Rabbi Lezer considered to be tar, Visar from Beish, and they burnt it. Right, and we're speaking about Truma, right, that touched this tanner, which according to the Chachamim, according to their view, it was tamei. They went and they burnt it like Truma Tmeya. And it didn't stop there. Being that he insisted on maintaining his position and continue opposing the majority, Chachamim had to really establish the majority's authority, because this really is central to our Messiah, to the upholding of our tradition. Right? Of Achi Rabbi Lahatos. And therefore they went to a very drastic step. And they resorted to putting him in Cherem, Berechuhu, and they blessed him, which is a euphemism. They put him into Cherem, excommunicated him. Now, V'nimnu olav berchu, and V'nimnu olav, according to Rashi and Psachim, is an additional point as well, that they took a vote and they decided that they are, going forward, they're no longer going to adopt his view as halacha. And on top of that, they put him into Cherem. But apparently he wasn't present at that moment, so he needed to be informed that he was in Cherem, which compels him to conform to a certain type of behavior, which is consistent with a person who was excommunicated, right? Removing shoes, etc. So how are they going to inform him? But they said like this: who's going to go tell him? It's a scary thing, he's a huge tzaddik, and we don't want to get involved in chas v'shalom hurting him and doing it disrespectfully, which might trigger some unwanted consequences. Rabbi Kiva says, you know what? I'm going to volunteer for the job. Ani elech. And I know how to do it. I'm a Talmud of his. I know how to, soften the blow. Shema yelech adam sheini hagen. I'm concerned that a person who's not fit for the role will actually do it. The idea will inform him in a way which is not respectful in a way which will be too direct, perhaps. V'nimtza machar, and that will trigger Rabbi Elazar's ire, and chas v'shalom, it can bring very grave consequences to the world at large. If he's makbid, if he gets upset, v'nimtza machar b'skalim kula, could destroy the whole world. So I'll go. I know how to do it. Ma asar b'kiva. So what did Rabbi Akiva do? He did it in a very subtle way. Lavash shchorim, nesatev shchorim, he got dressed and got wrapped up with black, which would be a sign to Rabbi Elazar that something's amiss. Rashi says, Inyan sa'ar ve'evel is an expression of pain and mourning. So he came to him and he sat down 4 amis away, indicating that Rabbi Elazar is in Chayrim, and therefore you have to keep a distance from him. So he got the message. Rabbi Elazar turns to Rabbi Akiva, Akiva, my yomi. Why is today different than any other day? What's going on? Amar Lois, he says, Rebbe, my Rebbe, kimdumali shechaveirecha, right? It seems to me like your colleagues are having a hard time. B'deilim imcha, they've decided to separate from you. He got the message, but it was done in a very respectful, subtle way. So, it was successful, and afu kara b'gada b'chalatz min olav. So Rabbi Elazar conformed to the halachas of Nidui, and he tore his begadim, removed his shoes, v'nishmat, v'yashal gabi karka, and came off the chair and sat on the floor. Zolga in of demois, but he was quite saddened and he started crying. Right, so his eyes shed tears, and look what happened. Loka ha'olam. And that resulted in a tragic consequence. It ruined the crops. The crops at that time suffered. Shlish b'zeisim, a third of this punishment affected the olives. Shlish b'chitim, a third the wheat. Shlish b'sa'orim, and the other third affected the barley. V'yish oimrim, and some added that af botzek shibdei isha tafach. It even affected and spoiled a batter, a dough that an isha was handling at that time. Tana, we learned in the Raisa, ach means a tragedy. Ach gadol haya v'isay hayoim. That day featured much tragedy. Shebachal makom shenasan by einav, Rabbi Elazar, wherever Rabbi Elazar placed his eyes have an unbelievable power. So that energy burnt it up. Nisraf, it burnt that location. V'af Rabbi Gamliel hayubah b'sina. Now Rabbi Gamliel, who was the head of the Bezdin at that point, so Rashi says he was the Nasi. V'al piv na'aseh. This whole procedure, this whole nidui, was of course done under his auspices. So on that very day, Rabbi Gamliel was traveling at sea on a ship. And suddenly there was a storm, an unexpected storm, about to sink the ship. Suddenly a big storm came about and threatened to sink the ship. Omar, Rabbi Gamliel got the message and he says, it appears to me, I know the source. I know what's causing this. This is all because of Rabbi Elazar. So he got up and he said like this. You know, it's known and revealed to you. This wasn't done for me. This was nothing personal. I didn't do it for myself, to protect my honor or my family's honor. I did it to protect your honor, to preserve the Torah and its traditions, to minimize discontent and ongoing perpetual disagreement in Klal Yisrael. There needs to be a system that we all conform to, right? Whether in Shemayim they agree or not in this particular case, but the fact is Hashem entrusted us with the Torah, handed us the formula and the tools, right, to implement the Torah. Torah says Achri Ravim Lahatois. That's critical to the continuity and to the maintaining of the integrity of Torah. So that's why we took this drastic step. Okay, no hayam izapoy. Suddenly the sea calms down. Okay, Ima Shalem, that was her name. She was the wife of Rabbi Elazar, Dvisu Rabbi Elazar, and she actually was the sister Achsei the Rabbi Gamliel Havoy. So she was the sister of Rabbi Gamliel, who was sort of in charge of this whole process, and she was Rabbi Elazar's wife, and she sought to protect Rabbi Gamliel from Rabbi Eleazar, her husband's, kpeda. So what did she do? We all know that Nefilas Apayim after Shemoneh Esrei has great power. So she prevented her husband from doing Nefilas Apayim, lest it adversely affect. Right? In Nefilas Apayim we daven, we sort of relate to Hashem how we're being pursued and we're persecuted, and Hashem, please, right? So she knew that it could bring about punishment to Ram Gamliel. Mahu Masav Elach. So starting from the day of the story onward, she wouldn't allow her husband Rabbi Elazar to do Nefilas Apayim, lest her brother Ram Gamliel, who was the cause for all this, suffer as a result. And what happened? On one day she missed it. On that certain day, Reish Yar Chahava, it was Rosh Chodesh, and on which we don't do Nefilas Apayim. But she mistakenly thought that it was Erev Rosh Chodesh. Sorry, just the other way around. She thought it was Rosh Chodesh because she thought it was a 30-day, it was a 29-day month. So it was day 30. She thought it was Rosh Chodesh. She figured he won't do Nefilas Apayim regardless. She doesn't have to stand on top of him. But really, it was a 30-day month. Rosh Chodesh was first tomorrow. She got mixed up bein Moli l'chaser. She thought it was a missing month. It really was a full month. And the day that she thought was Rosh Chodesh wasn't really. So he didn't Nefilas Apayim on that day. Some say it was due to a different reason. Anya, suddenly, when he was holding out Nefilas Apayim, suddenly a poor man comes around, V'kaya Bava, comes to the door, Apikali Rifta, so she had to run out and bring him some bread, and by the time she came back, too late. She missed it. Ashkachte, Zenafal on pay, and she notices him on his head, on his face, doing Nefilas Apayim. Amalei, she turns to him and says, "Get up quickly, kum kalas la'achik, get up, you already killed my brother." She figured it's a done deal. And it was true, Adahachi. In the meantime, Nafak Shipura, based on Gamliel, a shofar came blowing. Basically, they announced from Gamliel's house the shachav that he passed away. Amr Allah, so he tells his wife, "No yadas. How did you know that this happened?" Amr, she says, it's very simple. Kach mikublani. Beis Abi Abba, I have this Kabbalah from my grandparents. Rashi says she was from the family of David HaMelech, right? She was Gamliel's sister, so they were descendants of David HaMelech. I have this Kabbalah from way back. Kol hasha'arim nin'alu chutz mishariyina. Like we learned before, it's very powerful. So even if all other gates of tefillah closed up when a person davens to Hashem to express his innermost pain, his tsar alev, Rashi says, why is it so different? Remember we learned about Shari Demois, right? When a person is totally connected to Hashem, totally, melting away to Hashem, that really opens all gates. And I know is connected to that. The person feels totally broken and right and bitter. So that connects to Shari Demois. And in fact, it's very effective, very dangerous in this case. Tana Rabban Hama'anas Hager, if a person is not careful in the way he speaks to a ger, he makes insensitive comments to a ger. Over b'shleisha lavin, he got 3 lavin. Likewise, if a person pressures a ger to return a loan, which he can't return at this point, over b'shnayim, he's over on 2 isurim. Ma'ishna ma'ana t'chsiv shleisha lavin. Why, when it comes to hurting his feelings, we say it involves 3 lavin? Number 1, v'ger lo yisayne. Number 2, v'chiyagur itcha ger ba'artzach lo yisaynu. Oisay. Number 3, v'lo yisaynu yisamitay. Which pertains to every yid, right? And also to the ger. V'ger b'chal amitahu. And the 3rd lav, which indicates amitay, is also on the ger. The ger is, one of your brethren. V'ger b'chal amitahu. So it's a total of 3. Lo yisay namish lo yishaksivi. What about the other point of forcing him to pay a loan? It also involves 3 yisurim. 3 psukim. V'lo yisilchatzenu, v'ger lo yisilchatz, right? And v'lo yisiyah lekenoishem, which applies to every Yid, but also to the Ger, right? The Ger B'chlal, Ger is included, so why is it only 2? It should be 3. Ella, you're right. Echad, Zevach, Zevach, Shlosh, in both cases, he has violated 3 Yisurim. Tanya, Bleza, God, La'imer. Mipnei ma, his hero, Torah, B'lamed, Vav, Mekaimis. V'amela, B'mem, Vav, Mekaimis, B'ger. If you look around the Torah, you find an inordinate amount of, unusual amount of places. So many places where the Torah warns against being insensitive to a ger. 36 places, 46 places. Why is it so, highlighted? Because a ger, deep down he's tempted. Look, if you give him a hard time, he might just drop the whole thing, go back to his old ways. So the Torah encourages us very strongly to be nice to him, be soft to him, be sensitive to him, to make him feel, accepted and at home. What does the pasuk mean when it says, don't harass the ger, because you yourself, Klal Yisrael, you yourself were a ger in Eretz Mitzrayim. Tanya, from Nasan Omer, the Torah means like this. Look, you have a chip on your shoulder. Don't mumshabacha, your own deficiency, i.e., your own gerus experience when you lived out in the strange land of Mitzrayim. Don't go ahead now and relate that to the ger. Mumshabacha al toim l'chavrecha. It's not right for you to point out the ger's deficiency, the fact that he's a ger, when you yourself had a similar experience. And this is consistent with the common phrase that people say, the zakaf zakifa. If a person's family member was hung by the authorities, zakaf means hung. Zakifa b'diyutke, in his family, there's such an unfortunate experience. So members of those families don't typically relate to any word that relates to hanging, because it's not comfortable. It's uncomfortable for them to relate to that experience, or anything that remotely takes them back to that experience. He doesn't tell his friend, Zakib, he needs to hang up, the fish. He keeps away from any reference to hanging because it relates to his bad experience, to the embarrassing episode in the family. So bottom line is, we were all ger at a certain point in history. Treat the ger with sensitivity. Okay, we began with the importance of avoiding shaming somebody b'rabim, right? It's even more important than suffix ish, than kivsha na'esh, right? We have David HaMelech, we have Tamar with Yehuda. We have the Gemara discussing being sensitive to one's wife. It's even more important than an ordinary person. We have the Kayach of Oinah, it breaks through all the gates of heaven, Shari D'mois, Shari Oinah. And we moved on to the whole episode of Rabbi Lezer and the Chachamim involving that problematic Tanur, which resulted in Rabbi Lezer being put in Cherem, and Rabbi Lezel's explanation on that ship, that it was all done to Kavod Hashem. And then we conclude with the importance of protecting the ger's honor and being sensitive and nice to him. All the best to you, Hatzlacha Rabbah.